Kelly Nelson. So
he did.
One day presented me with a 30-page document and said, what do you think of this story? And I read it, and it was all backstory. He had figured all of the backstory out. You know what I mean? I mean, when Douglas Marland wrote an outline, he would write examples of dialogue. He would write the taglines of the scenes. I mean, his outlines were, 12, 15 pages. And then he'd hand them to his writers to do the scenes, and then he'd rewrite, and he kept each character's voice different. You know? I went to, another show, and it was like, Act 1, so-and-so and so-and-so have a fight in the kitchen. Act 2. I'm like, what?
After working the other way.
You know what I mean? It was like the outlines were 2 pages long. It was like, how on earth did they write, that way? But he was one in a million, and, he was the last of that kind of, he really was on Guiding Light. He was really unique. I mean, in those days, the producers tried to keep the writers and the actors separate because they would have more power. If they didn't like an actor, they'd go to the writer and say, so-and-so doesn't really like your writing.
Oh, my God.
Or if they wanted to intimidate an actor, they'd say, I don't know, the head writer isn't happy with you.
Oh.
But see, Doug was an actor and loved actors, so he talked to us, which cut through all the bullshit.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know how it was for everybody else, and I'm sure I had the best of it because Kelly was his first new character. Morgan, he was very invested in that storyline. Nola, he was very invested in those storylines. So, I had the best of the best at the peak of when daytime audiences were at their peak. You know what I mean? So how lucky was I? And after playing 4 years of squeaky clean, the guy every mother's would want her daughter to be with, that guy,
right.
I got to take that guy into As the World Turns and play him all the way out to stark, raving, frigging crazy. So immediately I got to break type. And ever since then, I tell people it's been superheroes and psychopaths, and I wouldn't have it any other way. How lucky am I?
You were lucky.
That's
John,
funny.
I have to tell you. I'm sorry.
No, go
John,
ahead, David.
Douglas Cummings' story was, to me, one of the best stories on daytime.
Let me tell you, I agree with you. Not only that, it was one of the best stories that's ever been told on television. My mom, because she was curious, I don't know how long this took her, but she edited from As the World Turns, my 8 or 10 months, whatever they were, every scene that touched on or related to the Douglas Cummings story. Before we ever knew it was the Douglas Cummings story. From the minute I went on, if there was a murder, before anybody connected it with me, if anything that later on you found out, oh, my God.
Yep.
And believe me, the phones lit up at CBS that day when they found me in the secret room. But Mom said, it's amazing. She said, I've tracked, and she edited it together like a miniseries, and my entire family has said, you need to sit down and watch this. To date, this is some of the best work you have ever done.
Wow.
And she said, the amazing thing is, I come in as the answer to Julianne Moore's problems, right? Okay.
Right.
Then on one end of the story, Kim starts getting all these secret admirer gifts. Nobody connects that to me. On the other side of town, murders start happening. Nobody connects the murders to the secret admirer and connects either of them to me. He had 3 storylines going that he had to wind together. Mom said, do you know there's not one slip-up? There's not one instance of you being somewhere that would have made it impossible for you to have, in other words, every time Kim found a note or a gift, I had just been at the house. If there had been a murder committed across town, And due to some screw-up, he had me at the restaurant. Everybody knew I was at the restaurant. I couldn't have done it. She said there's not one hiccup in the entire tracking of that three-pronged story from beginning to end. Well, I mean, that's how often does that happen? I mean, even in prime time, wait a minute.
It was.
Wait a minute. He was over here. He didn't have time to get over there and murder, and come back. Wait a minute. When was he at the house? When did he leave that gift? And if he wasn't there right before she found the gift, how come the gift was there that long before she found it? It's all tracked.
Wow. Yeah, that's genius. I mean, he was just an incredible writer and creator. I mean, I think, it helped that he understood actors with being an actor himself and how he wanted the storylines to go.
Oh, he was. He was. It was so funny. One thing I'll always remember, he would drop in at the studio, and he came in one day, and I could tell he was just, I said, what on earth is up with you? And he said, well, we just had a meeting, for example, and they were saying something. They would always talk about the focus groups, And I remember his take on the focus groups. He said he got so mad because they were saying, well, Doug, because let me tell you, at the beginning, Kelly Morgan Nola's story, the ratings, it's like plummeted. And it's like when you're gardening, you have to prune the bushes back and then the new shoots grow. Well, they didn't understand that, so they're freaking out. Well, the focus groups, they don't like this, they don't like that. He said, I slammed my hands down on the table. I said, if I hear, and when Doug got angry, he'd shake.
Mm-hmm.
I hear the word focus group this and walking out that door. He said, not because I had no respect for our audience, but because people, if you did everything the focus group wanted, every crime would be solved, every couple would be together and happy, every villain would be punished, and you'd have no story.
Exactly.
So he'd say, tell a story. And they did, and they certainly reaped the benefits of it,
Well, thank God he was the one with the brains,
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we talk about the days of the old studio system movies when the David O. Selznicks, we had creative executive producers, instances, no disrespect. We have in positions of authority at networks and studios. For all of them, obviously, that are numbers crunchers. And they basically have formulas. And they don't have a sense of continuity. They don't have necessarily a creative vision. What they have is a formula for ratings that they plug people into according to the TVQ, according to their, a European audience quotient, This is why I love Frank Valentini. I think he is a creative executive producer. I mean,
we love them. We love them. They're our heroes, and now they're on General Hospital creating magic there. So,
and he would take. I mean, Frank Valentini would do whatever was necessary. He would be there 1 minute looking at the screen going, well, what about this shot? We need a shot here. Go back here and take this. Go back here and take that. And the next minute, he'd be pulling off his tie and moving scenery. The next minute, he'd be putting it back on and taking the kids to do an interview. I mean, this man was indefatigable, Indefatigable? How do you say that word? You know what I mean?
Tireless.
How's tireless? Let's go with tireless.
That works.
That works.
Yeah. And Doug Marlin was like that. He was really, during his tenure, while I worked with him, he was the old school head writer, the head writer / executive producer. You know what I mean? And the smart ones, like Cal, he got it, and he worked with Doug instead of resisting Doug. You know what I mean?
Right.
In other words, instead of an executive producer digging in and saying, hey, you're encroaching on my territory, he got that he was working with a genius.
Right.
And his genius was in facilitating Doug's vision on world terms. You know,
right.
Guiding light, and then, so I don't know if that answers your question, but you know, it was a dream. I mean, if you were going to do daytime TV, doing it in the early '80s and having Douglas Marland be your head writer and you be the first character that he's bringing on the show is the catbird seat. You know,
that right. I could understand that.
He was very generous. You know, when I won my first Emmy, someone had said, you know, you must be very proud of John, but he said, oh, what a great story. And he said, without missing a beat, he said, you know, I've written a lot of stories for a lot of actors. They don't all win Emmys.
No, yeah.
And that's what he was, you know, he was just that way. You know.
Wow.
Now, the people he did not like, or did not respect, or he felt did not try, did not give, I'm sure they would have an entirely different perspective.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Or for some reason they didn't jive, or you know, we all have those. But I know that, you know, if you talk to, you know, Lisa Brown, I mean, my God, the whole final. You said you waited for Morgan to get it. When Kelly finally found out that what Nola was up to, and the first 22 minutes of the show were me and Lisa Brown going into each other.
Yep.
I mean, he was so much a part of that process. We were on the phone to him. I mean, rewrites were coming in at the last minute. We were going, it just doesn't feel. What do you think about this? Let's try that. And then Harry Eggert, God bless him, the director, said, okay, you know, I don't remember a time when the first 22 minutes of an hour show have been two characters going at each other, but this is built up, and I'm going to put one camera on you, John, I'm going to put one camera on you, Lisa, and we're going to have a two-shot. I think it was a fourth camera. He said, go. And wherever you are, I will be there.
Oh.
I mean, geez, that's what I mean about, you know, I came up with people who were better looking than me, who were every bit as talented, who, for whatever reason, some people call it destiny, some people call it destiny, fate, luck, chance, whatever you think it is, you know, were positioned to take it down. In other words, I'm suffering under no delusion that I've had the career that I've had because I'm more talented than the people that failed because they had families and weren't making enough money. I'm not suffering under that delusion, and I'm really glad because I know actors that are. They think, oh my God, this is all about me.
No.
But I have been at certain points in my career, you know, available for transitions. Kelly Nelson, 4 years of a good guy, goes into Douglas Cummings. I immediately break type. Goes into, you know, Broadway. My first time on Broadway, goes into a superhero. We're on this star of the most expensive show Warner Brothers had ever done for television, which was a critical and an industry hit, and which corporate CBS at the Tonys the following year apologized to me because they had mishandled that show.
Oh, wow.
They all realized it, you know. Going into the character on NYPD Blue, going into super nice dad. I mean, I can look at Mitch Leery now, and I don't see me, and I go, God, you were a good dad. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I look at that scene where he's teaching Dawson how to kid, and that's Kevin Williamson genius. Want to talk about another genius? The scene where this construct blows my head wide open. At one point, Dawson's making a horror film. So he has a prosthetic head of Joey who's about to be decapitated in the scene they're shooting that night. He is in love with Jen and is curious about how do you kiss a girl. So Mitch says the head is sitting on the table. He says, well, practice. He picks up the head of Joey. Meanwhile, we don't know that Joey has snuck in and is watching the scene from above.
I love that. I watched it last night again, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
As Dawson practices kissing Jen on a prosthetic head of her.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that's not a construct that that blows my mind wide open.
What I loved was that Joey was up there